All right, let's just jump right in. We are tackling what might be the biggest, most fundamental question anyone can ever ask. Why is there all this? A universe, a planet, people. Why is there anything instead of just, well, nothing?
So this classic phrasing of the question, it comes to us from the German philosopher Gottfried Leibniz, all the way back in 1714. And for more than 3 centuries, this single question has been the starting point for pretty much all wonder about existence itself. It's the big one.
But this is not some dusty academic question that only philosophers care about. I mean, look at this. It's a recent post from Reddit. Somebody, right now, is trying to wrap their head around this exact same thing. It's a question that hits you on a personal level, you know? It's real, it's deep, and it gets to the very core of what it means to be alive.
So yeah, let's be clear about what we're dealing with. This isn't just a question. It's what you might call the ultimate why question. It's the one that sits underneath everything else.
And why is it the ultimate one? Well, thinkers like Martin Heidegger would say that before you can even begin to ask what's true or what's moral or even what's real, you first have to face the mind-boggling fact that things are, that they exist at all. Every other question we could possibly ask is built on top of this one single mystery.
Okay, so where do you even start with a question that big? You have to start with the most basic tool we have for making sense of the world, for making sense of anything, and that's our language.
And I just love this line from that same Reddit thread. Think about it. Every time we say something is or is not, we're basically weaving this invisible web that holds our whole reality together. Everything we think, everything we know, is built out of these tiny, powerful words. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. That little word is actually does 2 totally different jobs. Sometimes we use it to say something simply exists, like there's a cup on the table. Philosophers call that the substantialist use. But other times, we use it to describe what that thing is, like the cup is red. That's the predicative use, and some early thinkers actually got these 2 meanings tangled up, which, as you can imagine, led to some seriously deep confusion.
So once we've got language, we can build logic on top of it. You know, a set of rules for making good, solid arguments. It's our attempt to think clearly and rationally. But, and this is a huge but, just because an argument sounds logical doesn't mean it's right. The whole framework can be flawed.
Just take a look at this. This is a super common logical mistake. It goes, if P is true, then Q will happen, okay? Hey, look, Q happened, so P must be true. It feels right, doesn't it? But it's totally broken. Let me show you why with a perfect example.
And there you have it. If there's a hedgehog in my gas tank, my car won't start. That's a reasonable statement. My car won't start, that's a fact. Therefore, there must be a hedgehog in my gas tank. See, it's ridiculous. The conclusion is totally wrong, even though the argument has a seemingly logical shape. So the takeaway here is that language and logic are our first, most basic tools, but they're tricky. They can build our reality, but they can also fool us.
All right, let's move on to our next big tool. What happens when we take that logic and apply it rigorously to the world around us? We get science, our most powerful method for understanding physical reality. But the picture of reality that science paints for us, well, it has changed dramatically.
You see, for hundreds of years, classical physics gave us this nice, neat, predictable universe. It was like a giant clock. Everything worked according to fixed laws, whether we were looking or not. But then quantum mechanics came along and flipped the table. It says reality at the tiniest level isn't predictable. It's probabilistic. It says things can be fundamentally linked across vast distances. It even says that the act of observing something can change what you see. The very nature of what it means for something to be got a whole lot weirder.
And here's the thing, we can't just ignore this weirdness. You want to know why? Because quantum theory is the single most accurate, most tested theory in the history of science. Its predictions have been confirmed in some cases to more than 10 significant digits. That's an insane level of accuracy. So the bottom line is, our best tool for understanding objective reality tells us that reality itself is completely counterintuitive.
So, if our language can be tricky, and our best science describes a reality that's almost impossible to grasp, what happens when we try to talk about things science can't even touch? Things like God, or meaning, or creation itself. What tools are we supposed to use then? Well, to talk about these kinds of things, we have to start playing a different kind of language game, as some philosophers would put it. We often have to rely on what are called models. We're not just trying to describe what is,
We're trying to find a way to talk about something that's by its very nature beyond our direct sight.
So what do we mean by a model here? It's not a scientific diagram, it's more like an analogy or a metaphor. You take a familiar situation or idea and you use it as a lens to try and understand something unfamiliar. It's a similarity with a difference that hopefully gives you some kind of insight. And to make this concrete, just look at these two completely different models for God that have shaped history. In the Semitic traditions, think Judaism or Islam, the model is of a divine person. God is a being who thinks, who wills, who acts in history. But in the ancient Greek model, from philosophers like Aristotle, God is an abstract principle, the first cause, the thing that gets everything moving but doesn't move itself. See? Two totally different lenses for trying to grasp the same ultimate idea.
And this is what it sounds like when one of those models becomes a raw, personal reality for someone. This note was found sewn into the coat of Blaise Pascal, who is a genius scientist and philosopher. After a powerful mystical experience, this is what he wrote. Notice he says this is the God of people, not of the philosophers. It's not an abstract idea anymore. For him, it became certitude, feeling, joy, peace, a deeply felt truth.
And that feeling, that brings us to our last and final tool. We've looked at logic, at science, at metaphysical models. But what about the language of direct experience itself? What about art?
Here's a cool way to think about it. If science tries its best to describe reality and philosophy tries to question reality, maybe art just expresses it. The poet T.S. Eliot once wrote that great art happens through a continual extinction of personality, where the artist kind of gets out of their own way and becomes a channel for something deeper, something more universal.
And maybe the purest example of this is music. I mean, think about it. Music doesn't make logical arguments. It doesn't really tell a story with a plot. It just is. It goes straight past our rational brain and hits our emotional core, the nonverbal parts of us. Music can't explain what truth is, but boy, can it make you feel it.
And this beautiful quote from Mozart. This is the artist's answer to the big question. For him, creating music wasn't about solving an intellectual puzzle. It was this overwhelming feeling of happiness and gratitude just to be alive. The answer to why is there something wasn't a sentence, it was a symphony. It was pure joy. So we've got all these different tools. We've got language and logic to help us think clearly. We've got science to explore the physical world. We have these philosophical models to help us grapple with what we can't see. And we have art to express the direct feeling of what it's like to be here. Each one gives us a different piece of the puzzle. So the final question really isn't for me to answer. It's for you. With all these tools at your disposal, how will you make sense of it all?